For centuries, the residential kitchen has been a modest and highly practical space. In the past, it was small, efficient, and remarkably predictable. But in recent decades, something extraordinary has occurred. Across the suburban landscape, enormous masses have begun to emerge from the cabinetry. Vast wooden or stone formations, often forming barrier chains between areas of domestic industry and communal living. Some serve as places of nourishment and gathering. Others have become enormous cluttered wastelands from which no permission slip has ever returned. Today, we journey deep into this strange and fascinating ecosystem to explore the kitchen islands. Welcome to Residential Archaeology. I'm George Grant Birch, Houston realtor and self-proclaimed residential archaeologist. Today, we travel deep into a chain of large and highly specialized structures found throughout suburban America, the kitchen islands. Though they may appear similar to the untrained eye, each of these islands has evolved to serve a unique purpose. Some are places of nourishment and gathering. Some function as centers of domestic industry. Others slowly accumulate layers of detritus and clutter. Together, they form one of the most important ecosystems in the modern home. On our first stop of the tour, we encounter Cooktop Island, a relatively recent evolutionary development in the modern kitchen. For most of human history, fire remained fixed to the outer edges of the dwelling, confined to hearths, walls, and enclosed cooking spaces. But over time, advances in ventilation, gas distribution, and electric power made something previously impossible achievable: the creation of a freestanding heat source at the very center of the domicile. Perhaps this was inevitable. For thousands of years, humans have gathered around flame. Fire provided warmth, protection, nourishment, and often social hierarchy itself. Here, the primary food bearer of the household occupies a position of elevated visibility, preparing meals while remaining fully engaged with the surrounding clan. The scale of the island and the sophistication of the fire-making apparatus installed upon it often serve as indicators of the household's resources, priorities, and social aspirations. Some specimens are modest and practical. Others feature enormous gas burners, sculptural ventilation canopies, and enough polished stone to suggest ceremonial significance. Cooktop Island is most commonly associated with clans organized around a primary food bearer. In these households, one dominant culinary figure performs the majority of meal preparation activities. This individual may be identified by specialized equipment, unusually strong opinions regarding cookware, and a tendency to refer to the kitchen as my space. Yet despite their beauty, these islands remain potentially hazardous environments. Open flame, hot oil, and distracted conversation can produce sudden and unpredictable outcomes. As a result, Cooktop Island has evolved certain defensive characteristics. Increased surface area creates safer distances between flame and observer. Elevated ventilation structures draw smoke and heat upward and away from the surrounding habitat. Seating zones are often pushed outward to protect younger and more vulnerable members of the household. In larger homes, the entire island may expand dramatically, creating a broad protective territory around the fire itself, much like the ancient hearths from which it ultimately descends. But not all islands evolved around fire. Deeper within the archipelago, another formation awaits. Here we encounter Food Prep Island. If Cooktop Island evolved around flame, Food Prep Island evolved around water. Here we often find the primary water source of the kitchen ecosystem, a deep basin used for washing produce, preparing meals, and processing the endless flow of domestic activity. In smaller habitats, a single large vessel may serve the entire household. But in more elaborate environments, secondary waterways sometimes emerge. Small auxiliary basins, fed by narrow rivulets of plumbing, reduce the distance water must be carried across the territory. Over time, the water systems themselves have evolved dramatically. Once simple utilitarian bowls, many now feature integrated cutting surfaces, draining channels, colanders, drying racks, and specialized attachments designed to increase efficiency within the surrounding habitat. Food Prep Island is more commonly found among clans where communal food preparation behaviors remain active. Here, labor is distributed across multiple members of the group. Some gather and transport ingredients. Others wash, sort, carve, and prepare, while more experienced members apply fire, water, heat, or refrigeration as necessary. During major seasonal gatherings, these islands may support surprisingly complex cooperative behavior. Broad, open, and remarkably efficient, Food Prep Island remains one of the most highly specialized environments in the modern kitchen archipelago. Beyond the functional territories of fire and water, we arrive at a very different class of formations, the dry islands. These islands contain neither open flame nor primary water sources, though some specimens may support secondary technologies such as microwave heating or remote refrigeration units. Freed from the demands of cooking and cleaning, dry islands evolved primarily around social behavior. When bordered by elevated seating structures known as stools, they function as informal dining territories where members of the household gather for quick meals and daily interaction. Morning feeding rituals are especially common here. Coffee is consumed while phones are checked. Children prepare reluctantly for migration toward school. Dry islands are especially common in densely developed urban and semi-urban habitats where external dining environments are abundant and easily accessible. In these regions, the islands often evolve away from large-scale food production and toward gathering, conversation, and temporary dining behavior. Meals are frequently transported into the habitat from nearby public feeding grounds rather than prepared entirely within the home itself. As a result, dry islands often become centers of social interaction rather than culinary labor. Though originally evolved for dining and social gathering, the dry islands have demonstrated remarkable behavioral flexibility. In many households, they are routinely pressed into service as temporary educational and administrative territories. This phenomenon is especially common in habitats lacking dedicated studies, libraries, or enclosed office environments. During the early 21st century, a dramatic increase in remote labor further accelerated this adaptation. Adults previously accustomed to migrating daily toward centralized office habitats suddenly found themselves conducting meetings, processing documents, and communicating with distant coworkers directly from the island itself. This transition was aided by several characteristics already present within the environment. Dry islands are typically positioned near the center of the household ecosystem and are often illuminated by powerful overhead task lighting originally intended for food preparation and gathering activities. Their broad, open surfaces provide ample territory for laptops, paperwork, charging devices, and other tools required for modern administrative behavior. Though these environments lack the seclusion and acoustic stability preferred for complex operations, they offer one significant evolutionary advantage: the ability to supervise offspring while simultaneously performing administrative tasks. This allows multiple forms of domestic activity to occur within a single shared territory. However, the overlap is not without risk. Competing sound patterns, food debris, and unexpected juvenile interruptions can create highly unstable working conditions. In especially large or resource-rich habitats, a rare formation sometimes emerges: the double chain atoll. Here, multiple islands coexist within a single interconnected ecosystem. These formations are most commonly associated with large or affluent clans, where several forms of domestic activity may theoretically occur simultaneously. Water, fire, dining, gathering, food preparation, administrative behavior, and seasonal migration events. Entire territories may be carefully specialized for each activity. And yet, one of the greatest ironies of the double chain atoll is that many exist within habitats where little actual cooking takes place at all. These clans often gather elsewhere for nourishment. migrating regularly toward nearby dining establishments and external feeding grounds. The atoll itself may remain quiet for days at a time. Members of the household wandering in only occasionally, perhaps for a morning coffee, a chilled beverage, or the retrieval of a small cube of cheese. As a result, these vast formations often remain remarkably undisturbed, their polished stone surfaces pristine, their elaborate fire and water systems seldom fully utilized. In such environments, the kitchen archipelago evolves beyond pure utility, becoming instead a monument to beauty, abundance, aspiration, and untapped domestic potential. But not every island survives intact. In certain habitats, we encounter a far more fragile formation, the Forsaken Island. Once envisioned as the center of domestic activity, these territories now sit largely abandoned. Unlike the highly specialized islands found elsewhere in the archipelago, these environments often emerge where natural household behavior and physical design failed to evolve together successfully. Water sources may be positioned too far from surrounding activity. Fire territories may interrupt natural migration routes through the habitat. Seating zones may feel exposed, isolated, or disconnected from the daily rituals of the clan. In some cases, the surrounding traffic patterns themselves become unstable, forcing inhabitants to move awkwardly around the formation rather than naturally through it. Over time, these environmental stresses begin to alter behavior. Clan members gather elsewhere. Meals migrate to different territories. Daily rituals slowly reorganize around more favorable environments within the home. And the island, once intended as the center of the ecosystem, begins to fall silent. Unused surfaces gradually accumulate layers of detritus, unopened correspondence, charging cables, retail packaging, and other forms of domestic sediment. Without sustained activity to maintain balance within the ecosystem, the territory slowly declines. In many cases, these formations are not victim of neglect alone, but of poor adaptation, or perhaps a lack of insight among the early planners and builders who first laid out the land. From ancient fire rituals to modern remote work, the kitchen islands have evolved into far more than simple pieces of cabinetry. It has become a place of labor, gathering, nourishment, administration, ritual, migration, and occasionally quiet abandonment. These strange formations reveal much about the modern household: how families gather, how food is prepared, how work has entered the home, and how architecture succeeds or fails in supporting the behaviors of the clan who inhabits it. Whether humble or extravagant, heavily used or largely untouched, each island tells a story about the ecosystem that formed around it. And like all living systems, the archipelago continues to evolve. But what becomes of the kitchen islands in years ahead? Will these great formations continue to evolve, adapting to new technologies, shifting climates of work and family life, and the changing behaviors of the clans who inhabit them? Or will they slowly fade from the domestic landscape altogether, becoming relics of an earlier age? Landmarks from a time when preparing food, gathering together, and dining with the home remain central to daily life. Only time will tell. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the kitchen islands. If you'd like a reserved seat on the next expedition into the wild and often bewildering world of residential archaeology, consider subscribing. The map is far from complete, and there are still many strange territories left to explore. Until next time, I'm George Brant Birch, and this has been Residential Archaeology.